Thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for coming. I'm here, according to the schedule, to talk about usable security tooling, creating accessible security testing with ZAP. So I submitted this talk quite a while ago, and I kind of forgot what I named it. And when I saw the app and I saw that title, I was like, that is the least sexiest thing I've ever seen. I would not want to go attend that talk. So to spice it up a little bit, I want to get a new title on that. And we're going to be talking about hot action with a heads-up display today. And I am still David Scribonia. So who am I? I work at Segment, and before that, I worked at a couple places, General Dynamics, Raytheon, MindBody, and I've contributed to OWASP projects in the past, so the App Sensor project. If you haven't heard of it, go check it out. And currently now working on ZAP. And to quickly plug some good Segment stuff, my coworker Leaf mentioned this yesterday, but one of our developers, Ashil, has built this really awesome new Go package and recently open sourced it. So if you have any problems with SSRF or DNS rebinding in your Go code, definitely take a look at this package. I don't know the best way to describe all the details, but it uses like the dialer and like modifies at that level. So it's like more performant and for sure more secure. And we're also hosting the Day of Security. So if you're up in the Bay Area, come stop by. It's like 2 Tuesdays from now in two weeks, something like that. So definitely come by. But this is a lightning talk. And just as the ZAP logo clearly represents, we need to keep it going fast. So I'm here to talk about ZAP. So if you're not familiar with it, it is a Java application. It's open source, and it's a dynamic web application testing tool. And the way it works is that you're going to open up ZAP, and you're going to open up your browser and go to the site that you want to test. And when you go to the site you want to test in your browser, ZAP is going to intercept the message as a proxy, and it's going to forward it on to your server, and then it's going to intercept the HTTP response, and then forward that back to the browser. And when you're using ZAP, you'll typically have some sort of setup like this. You'll have ZAP open on one side, and the browser open on the other. And because it has this man-in-the-middle position, there's a lot of really powerful things that ZAP can do. You can intercept requests. You can replay requests. You can attack defined issues like SQLite command injection. There's this huge support for this add-ons. There's a bunch of different new functionality you can add. You can actually script in ZAP itself to add new functionality to various parts. It's got a REST API. It's really powerful. And you also might be more familiar with Burp. As you can see here, they're basically the same tool. There's a couple different things between the two. So Burp, I've heard, has some better single-page application support. They have a couple of tools that I think are a lot easier to use than ZAP. So their like, fuzzing tools are much more accessible. But on the flip side, ZAP has this REST API that, as far as I'm aware, Burp just does not. You can run any functionality out of ZAP. So there's kind of pros and cons to both. But one of the big benefits of ZAP is that it is very free, which is a huge advantage. And so yeah, it's free and open source, 600,000 downloads of ZAP itself, 1 million Docker pulls, which is pretty wild, and it's an OWASP flagship project. So what's the problem? Well, I recently found a questionnaire we had sent out to users of ZAP a couple years ago. And one of the questions on there was, what is ZAP bad at? Yikes. ZAP is bad at being intuitive. All right, well, let's get some more details here. It's a lot of information. It's overwhelming. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. The UI feels confusing. I don't know where to find things. And some people really wanted to let us know how they felt. It's quite ugly. Or it's quite ugly but smiley face, you know, a little passive-aggressive touch in there, like. And I agree. I mean, this is overwhelming. This is not intuitive. And a couple other interesting tidbits from this is that 70% of users of ZAP have been a part of application security for less than 3 years. 40% of them for less than 1 year. I'm pretty young, but I've still been a part of application security for about 5 years. And I still find that confusing. So how should someone who's only been in the industry for a year or so be able to understand which XSS list they want to use buried in the submenu of some tool? Another good one was, what is your primary role? While 35% of the users of ZAP are in security, 45% of them were QA or developers. Again, these aren't people who are necessarily focused on security all the time. They might be looking for help or guidance in security and reaching out to a tool like this to give them some assistance with that. So it's really easy to understand why this feedback why we got this feedback. This is not the simplest thing to use. And I'm not trying to bash ZAP or anything. Creating usable software is a difficult problem. And specifically, security software is not that great. I'm sure a lot of people can think of a static analysis tool that they've used that was just horrible. I've just seen the worst usability in those tools. I actually wrote a blog post about how security tools have this problem and how we can address it with this project. But we can compile the fact that usable software is hard to create, but then ZAP is also maintained by just a few people doing their best on a non-full-time schedule. It doesn't really make that much sense for them to necessarily go spend 4 months to go learn a new UI framework, go learn React, and then try to port everything over to it. Like, it's just not going to make sense. They're busy maintaining, updating, and keeping the application relevant. So what can we do? Well, just like my talk title was not that sexy, I think we need to bring a little hot action into it. And so what we did is we took our motivation from fighter jets. So here we have a heads-up display in a fighter cockpit. In this view, we can see things like the speed, the altitude. There's something on here called the bore sight, which is the direction the nose of the plane is pointing. There's something called the flight path vector, which is the actual direction the plane is moving in. You have the angle of attack, you have an attack reticle, you have a compass. All this information succinctly displayed. Now imagine how many gauges and knobs you would need laid across a dashboard to display the same information. You'd be trying to fly this plane, looking down, trying to check your speed, and then come back up, looking at your speed. And that's what we're doing right now with ZAP. It's the exact same problem. We test our applications in the browser, but we're going over to another tool completely. Not only is it a pain, but it's very ineffective. You can get much more power by putting it right there. And so we created the ZAP heads-up display. And so on that, I've got a video to show you, but that is only if the live demo fails. So let's check that out. So here we have ZAP running. I'm running the dev version right now. This is just 2.7 with a little more into it. And you can see that we have this new icon right here. So the heads-up display is created as an add-on to ZAP. And by just turning that on and launching our browser, you can see we now have something new overlaid our test site here. The resolution's a little funky, but we've now got this welcome menu, and you can start a tutorial, or we can continue to start attacking our target. So we've got Juice Shop loaded in the back, and shout out to Bjorn Kimnich. The Juice Shop project is incredible. If you need a vulnerable web application, it's the best one for modern stuff. And so you can see that we've now got these tools overlaid on either side of our web application. We've taken the functionality of ZAP and compressed them into these nice bite-sized tools. So we have a tool, for example, for scope. This allows us to add the application we want to attack to the scope. So do you want to add that? Yep, that'd be great. We also have a tool for the site tree. So how is our site organized? What are all the different pages? All right. Well, that will show the site tree usually. And
Did you spider yet?
no, usually it should show when I just load the page, but actually, now that you mention it, we do have the spider tool right here. So let's start that up. And by triggering that, oh man. Let's try this again real quick. Let's relaunch this. Worst case, I do have the videos for backup. Let's go to bummer. Let's see if budget works. Well, that was a good run. Let's go back to the demo videos, huh? The first time I've had to do it. Cool. All right. So internet withstanding, we should see it. So this is going to be an older version of some of the stuff. Unfortunately, I won't be able to show you all the cool new tools we've built. But yeah, so we're able to spider the site right from the browser, right? And that's going to trigger off the spider in the ZAP desktop running. We also have these alert tools on the side. These are our flags. So we can show you alerts for your specific page you're looking at, or for the entire site in total, so you can keep track of the different alerts that have been discovered. And as these alerts are discovered by the passive scanner, or if you start running the active scanner, you saw the Growler alert start to pop up on the side. It'll notify you every time a new alert has been found. And you can actually inspect each one of those alerts that you receive, and it'll give you feedback about what was the issue. If there was a line of code that triggered it, what was it? If there's remediation steps and connections to a bunch of like online resources. So all that's built right into the browser, which is really incredible. So I've already showed you that. Let's see. So we add to the scope. And yeah, you can see the spider running off on the side here. So let me show you the next slide in the demo. So in addition to being able to do these basic things, we can also now change the way we use ZAP for a lot of things. Because we're in the browser, doing things like intercepting messages just became a whole lot easier. So in this case here, if I remember how I set up this video, we're on Juice Shop right now. Oh, we're showing off the alerts. Oh, right, you can modify the different things. And so if you don't want to see certain tools, or we're going to add certain tools, you can customize the HUD for what you want to use. And later, well, we'll see. You can actually create a new tool in less than 3 minutes with any custom script that you want in a language that ZAP supports. So we should show off the intercepting message. So here we're going to go visit. OK, so one of the cool parts about using ZAP in the browser is that we have this new tool over here called Show Enable. And you can see that the data field, it's kind of hard to see, but it's got a 6 next to it. And what this has just done is it's taken any hidden fields or disabled fields and just enabled them in the browser. So if you're trying to see what developers were trying to hide in the hidden input, all of a sudden you can one-click just display it. And again, you could look in some source code and you could find that. That's not too wild, but you could imagine what else you could do with that kind of functionality. You can now modify the target page that you are trying to attack. One of the great things we've built around that is that if you perform an active scan and you find XSS in one of the forms, we will highlight that form with a red bar and put a flag next to it. We will tell you right in the browser where the vulnerability was found. You then click on that flag and we'll display information about what that cross-site scripting issue was. So here we can see we're introspecting the different alerts. It's telling us the different alerts we found on this specific page. Showing all the different varieties of it. Here's the different information about it. So here's the line of code that we found that issue. That's pretty powerful. Let's see if I can find the intercepting part of this. We can see at the bottom here, we also have, a little hard to see, but down here, there's also this bottom drawer. And this is just like your developer tools network tab, except this one's powered by ZAP. So we can view the request and response for everything that's been sent. And from right here, we can actually replay this information either in the console, which will just send the new request back and show you the response. And you can even fire it off to replay it in the browser, which I found extremely helpful. When you're using ZAP and stuff, and you want to try to replay an XSS attack, it's you have to copy the URL, you have everything. Right here, you just click the button and it will display it right in the browser and show you what the problem, what the vulnerability was, and how it got exploited. And we can also, oh yeah, this is showing off the replay in browser functionality. Let's see. This is showing the attack mode. And so by turning on attack mode, it's like an active scan, except instead of just going over all of the different spider nodes, nodes that you've spidered, it's going just where you are visiting. So if you really want to focus in on something, like I'm attacking this page and I don't want to scan my entire site, turn on attack mode, and what you start testing will start getting hammered. And so in this case, I searched for something with attack mode on. And you can see we've highlighted the box and we've put the flag by it. Your application is now marked up with how an attacker would view your application. All right, and this is going to be the coolest part of the demo. I think this is the video it is. So you can really quickly extend the HUD. So ZAP has this feature called scripts, and it allows you to write code that hooks into the different parts of ZAP. So on intercepting messages, or when it's doing active scan. And so what we've done here is that we've built this quick script in here using Zest, which is a graphical scripting language created by Mozilla, used by no one else but ZAP. But you can use JavaScript, Python, supports a couple different languages. And all this script is going to do is that when we intercept a message, the response, we're going to change the word budget to the word hacked it. Again, really simple script, but you can imagine all the different things you could do with this kind of power. And so we've created this script, and now we can also view all of the code that runs the heads-up display in ZAP. And so from right here, all we're going to do is find one of the tools, and we're going to copy it and create a new tool called Hack It. And this video is only 2.5 minutes long. We're only going to modify a few fields, and with that, we'll have created a brand new tool on that side for the user to use. And that's incredible because if you are in QA, if you're a developer, there's all these scripts that you want to run, and now you're kind of switching context between it. So why not just quickly bootstrap into this, and now you have it overlaid right over the thing you're trying to test. So we're going to change the label, the name of it. We're going to change what the message says when you click the button. And then the only two things that we're going to have to change after that is the API call. And so what we're going to tell it is to the HUD API has got an endpoint to let you enable a script by a name. And so because we can write whatever we want in these scripts, we can simply say, now turn that on or turn it off. Start running it. And so there's these two API calls down here, and we're going to change it instead of turning on attack mode. We're going to change the REST API to enable this specific script. I know it's a little blurry, but I promise it's real code. And after we do that, we'll restart the heads-up display. And in the future, you won't actually have to restart anything. It'll automatically kind of pull all that in for you. And when that happens, we'll actually see there's a new tool available for us to use. So here we've changed it to use the enable script endpoint with the hack it script. And we're changing one to enable, changing the other point to disable so you can turn it on and off. And with that, we hit save and we're done. That was all the code to create a new tool, all the effort. And so now we're going to go over here. And again, this will be more automated in the future. But I'm going to go to the service worker and turn this off. More about that later. And we'll restart the HUD to go visit our page. And we'll see that if we click the little plus icon, which shows us the available tools that we have available to us, that we have a new option for Hack It. And so when we click on that, it'll add it to our panel over there. And when we enable it and then refresh the page, you'll see that it's intercepted the message and changed the text. Again, that's kind of simple, but it's so cool. We've just taken anything you want to write and jammed it right in there. So that's pretty exciting. All right. Now we can get back to this. So how does this work? So The first thought is you'd think, okay, great, it's a browser extension. It's a great place to hook into that. But what if I told you that we didn't use any browser extensions at all? We actually kind of over-engineered a lot of it, but with the intent that we want to work for all browsers without having to support a plugin for Firefox, a plugin for Chrome, plugin for Safari. And so the way it works is that you've got ZAP running, as we do usually. It's intercepting the request and sending back the response. But when we use the heads-up display, we're actually going to modify the response. We're going to change the HTML to inject one JavaScript tag. And what this will do is it will modify the HTML received to add just as one line. And that's going to reference a script hosted by ZAP and returned that's encapsulated by a JavaScript closure so that the code JavaScript running on your target page can't interact with the heads-up display code unless we expose it to it. And then the script will modify the DOM to add these iframes in. And so typically where we had just our G-shot before, we now have these iframes laid over it. So great, we got the iframes up there. Done, right? Well, not quite. Because of a specific situation. So imagine you're trying to intercept a request. If you're using ZAP traditionally, you can see we have the request over here, and we've got the browser over there. But if you notice, the browser, while you're intercepting the request, is just kind of in limbo. It's waiting. It sent the request, and it's waiting for the response. And at this point, it's actually offloaded any JavaScript that was running. So we no longer have a hook in the browser to communicate back with ZAP. At this point, we're kind of dead in the water. So if we want to display that message back, we have no way to really communicate. And that's where we bring in what's called a service worker. And so if you're not familiar with service workers, it's basically just a JavaScript web worker, which is the background Java script thread. But it's got a few more extra powers to it. And the key one is that it doesn't die every time your page unloads. It actually persists across multiple page loads. And so what we do, that's where we store all of the key functionality and logic to the heads-up display. That also allows us to keep the panels as lightweight as possible so it can be very responsive. And so our service worker will communicate with our iframes using the post message API, which is a browser API, not to be confused with HTTP post messages. And it'll share information about how to update the panels. But the service worker can only communicate with iframes that are in its domain. So these iframes are actually in the ZAP domain, not in the target domain, which again gives us another level of isolation from the target application because we don't want to leave a big footprint on it. We don't want to modify the thing we're trying to test too much. And then from there, we have our injected script actually running on the target domain, and our iframes have a hook onto that by getting its parent method, or its parent DOM node, and can communicate to it. And then the inject script can now communicate to the target page to modify it to add these flags and highlight the boxes. But to really leverage the full power of ZAP, we use the REST API, and we'll send messages off to there to get a ton of functionality. If you haven't seen the ZAP API, take a look at it. It is extremely extensive. You can trigger any bit of functionality. And we also use the ZAP WebSocket API, which allows us to stream events live as they happen. So when we get those alerts flagged in ZAP, it'll let the heads-up display know immediately that it just found something. And because we want to persist this information across, we then store everything in IndexedDB. And an interesting thing, too, is that to support the HUD running across multiple tabs, it was actually a little more difficult than you would initially think because there's not really a support or notion for a tab in the normal browser. It's kind of just for extensions. So we did a bunch of heavy lifting around that. And ultimately, you get kind of this tangled web mess. And it's not just quite as simple as you would have thought with just a browser extension. So saw the demo, saw how it works, but how does this help you? Why should you care? Well, it doesn't really matter who you are because the heads-up display should be able to help you. And still in its infancy, but there's a lot of things we can do and we do have a lot of plans for. So if you're a developer, you should just be able to run it. If you're doing your developing and you've got a heads-up display running, we're just going to feed you information about security flaws. Like that's hugely valuable. It's zero cost to you as a developer to just get free information about how your application that you're developing might be vulnerable. And you're also able to see the application as an attacker would. You now have a new perspective on how your security team is going to be working on reviewing your feature. This is like the ultimate version of like pushing left. This isn't like in CI, this isn't in IDE, this is like as you're developing, it's letting you know. If you're a bug bounty hunter, this will help you simplify your process. So I took Jason Haddock's training course earlier, and as he was telling me all the things he does and his cool things, I kept writing down ideas for like new tools I wanted to build, right? Like you could build all these tools for recon. So the built with, the WAPalizer, which tell you the technology that is running on the application you're testing, you can have a tool for that and we'll just display it right there. If you wanted to figure out all the assets that are part of the target you're attacking, you could create a mask tool, which would then go find all the different domains, subdomains that are related to this, and then bring it in. You can also see that on this history tab down here, we do have little alerts every time we get a new message. And so what we can do is we can extend this drawer down here to have things for cookies, parameters, local storage. And every time there is a change to one of those things, we can give you a notification. Oh, new cookie just stored. Something just got changed in local storage. Again, you have just so much more visibility into what the application is doing. And a really cool one I thought about the other day is that in ZAP there's this notion of users. So you can log in as one user and define what it means to log in and log out. You can log in as another user and you can store that information. So that when you're testing like authorization bypasses, you can use these two users. So you can imagine a tool that just says users and you can click on it and it'll show two options, one to switch to user 1 and one to switch to user 2. All of a sudden, now you're testing these bypass things with a click of a button. Like that's incredibly powerful. If you're on the QA team, you now have more visibility. You can see what's going on in there. So we've got attack surface highlighting. You saw we were highlighting forms and the different hidden fields that were being displayed there. And you can fuzz and attack forms right in the browser, which is much simpler than trying to have to boot up 1, 2, 3, 7 different tools as a QA person trying to understand what's going on. And we can imagine that we can build a Jira plugin for this. So we've got the alerts. Why not have a little button on top of this that says send to Jira? It's going to auto-populate with all the information about the bug, and now you've just taken care of all that with a click of a button. And finally, if you're the security team, this allows you to enable your organization. So a really cool idea that was shared to me by John Melton, part of the App Sensor project, is that you can imagine just configuring the heads-up display for all of your developers and having the security team host a server with the different passive and active scanning rules. Because you can define your own rules in ZAP. You can have a trigger on things that are specific to your organization. Maybe your organization uses a specific stack, or maybe it's got a certain pattern, and you know you don't want to see that because that's a security issue. You can define those rules, host it, and every time your developers use the heads-up display, they pull the latest version down. So now centrally, you can manage how you're sharing the information with your entire development organization. That's extremely powerful. And that's the power we can do with the heads-up display. So you can use the heads-up display right now. It's in the alpha version. You can just go to the ZAP add-on marketplace and install it. You can download the ZAP weekly release. It's in there. And we're hoping to upgrade it to a beta version in 2.8, which is coming out very soon with a bunch of cool new other features. You can check it out on GitHub if you want to play with it yourself. And if you're interested in helping out with the project, please come let me know. I do not write pretty JavaScript. It is not good. If you write any decent sort of JavaScript, please come help me and make this project cleaner, more efficient, better, and help just build any cool new idea you have. So thank you all. Any questions? In the back.
First of all, I'm never sure. I'm never sure you're going to get to. I'm not sure you'll ever get to clean JavaScript. That might be an oxymoron. Anyway, first of all, great tool. I love it. I think Burp also suffers from a terrible UI, but that's my opinion. So you're doing, and I think it's a genius idea to do this by injecting JavaScript straight in, not having to create like plugins for every architecture.
Right.
So how does that work with frame ancestry and X-frame options? Because you mentioned so if I'm working with a site that has an actual CSP frame ancestry and et cetera, so does that covered part as the injection into the JavaScript?
Well, that's a great question because from the JavaScript, obviously we can't do anything about that. That's what those tools are built. But as the man-in-the-middle proxy, we can strip those things out. And so you can make the note that you might lose a little bit of security or something like that, but you can make that decision and say, it's okay, because I want to use this tool instead.
Right, so you're trying to make minimal modifications to allow the tool run, but you are modifying it in that sense. So you're not testing the absolute 100% fidelity, but still. Okay.
Exactly.
Still.
And there'll be options too to configure that to your liking.
Cool, good work.
Thank you. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. Hopefully, I'll get it running later, and so you can hunt me down if you want to see some actual live demos of it. Some other cool new features we've added recently. You can actually display a printed report from all of your findings. It'll just generate one right in the HTML for you with the click of a button. And there's also the ability to attack just a single page. So you can view the HTTP request and response and say, just attack this, and it'll generate alerts for that. So thank you all, and I appreciate your time.